Thanks for joining me on Global News and Zuma Nigeria. We begin with Israel in attacks by Israeli settlers in West Bank. Nusantara, Indonesia's pricey progress symbol to be inaugurated. Petong Tan Shinawatra becomes Thailand's youngest prime minister. Trump's anger at Harris-Biden switch fuels his campaign, and New Zealand to extradite Kim.com to the United States. Talking Israel-Gaza war, a Palestinian man has been killed and many others wounded after dozens of Israel settlers went on a rampage and attacked a village in the occupied West Bank, drawing widespread condemnation. On Friday, the 23-year-old Mahmoud Abdul Kader Sada was shot and another Palestinian suffered critical gunshot wounds to the chest in the attack on the village of Jit, east of Kalkilia. The Palestinian Health Ministry said dozens of masked Israeli settlers, some armed, hurled rocks and Molotov cocktails as they stormed the village, setting fire to numerous cars and destroying property. They also attacked the town of Huwara. Violence by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank has surged since Israel's war on Gaza erupted in October. Between October 7th and August 12th this year, the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, recorded some 1,250 Israeli settlers' attacks against Palestinians, resulting in at least 120 deaths and 1,000 incidents of property damage. The Israeli anti-settlement group Peace Now called the latest attacks pure settler terrorism supported by the state, sponsored by our government. The Mr. Claim organization, which is made up of Israelis opposed to the occupation of Palestinian territory, said that contrary to the publication in the news, this is not a nationalist event, but a terrorist attack. The White House said that attacks by settlers were unacceptable and must stop. The United Nations has continually condemned such attacks, but has stopped short of taking concrete steps to sanction accused settlers, many of whom are dual U.S. citizens. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, said those who participated in the attacks will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, according to a statement from his office. The Israeli military said it was probing. Far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said the attacks were in no way related to the settlement and the settlers. Smotrich has pushed for more Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, which are illegal under international law. Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, said sanctions must be imposed on the Israeli government over the violence. The future capital city of Indonesia, Nusantara, will be inaugurated on Saturday, the country's Independence Day, as the country looks to replace Jakarta, which has served as the capital since Indonesia declared independence from Dutch in 1945. A heavy metropolis of at least 11 million residents, Jakarta is plagued by some of the world's worst traffic jams, thick smog and overcrowding. It is also reportedly sinking due to unregulated groundwater extraction, and Indonesia's National Research and Innovation Agency has warned that by 2050, about 25% of the city could be submerged. Joko Widodo, Indonesian president popularly known as Jokowi, first announced his surprise plan to move the capital to the jungles of East Kalimantan on the Indonesian port of Borneo Island during his annual address to the nation on August 16, 2019. The capital city is not just a symbol of national identity, but also a representation of the progress of the nation, Jokowi said. This is for the realization of economic equality and justice. But some have queried the magnificent project known as Ibu Kota Negara, or IKN, from the outset. Aaron Wilson, a lecturer in politics and security studies at Australia's Murdoch University, said according to reports that the project reflected the defining features of the Jokowi administration. The government plans to move 20,000 civil servants in total from Jakarta to Nusantara. An initial group of 12,000 employees from 38 government ministries are supposed to make the move by the end of December 2024. To house all the new staff, some 47 apartment towers are being built, 12 of which were ready last month. By 2045, if all goes to plan, some 1.9 million people are anticipated to be living in Nusantara, more than the population of East Kalimantan's provisional capital, Samarinda. Talking judicial matters and election and politics, after Parliament confirmed her nomination by the ruling coalition of her few Thai party, Paetongtarn Shinawatra has become Thailand's youngest ever Prime Minister. Paetongtarn succeeds Threthat Vincent, who was removed on Wednesday from his post by a constitutional court ruling. The 37-year-old, known by her nickname Ung Ing, is the youngest child of billionaire tycoon Thaksin Shinawatra and is the third member of the family after her father and aunt to hold the nation's top job. Threthat's removal was the newest chapter in a long-running fight between the military, pro-royalist establishment and populist parties connected to Thaksin, who shook up the country's state politics when he first elected Prime Minister in 2001. He spent years in exile after being removed in a military coup in 2006 and returned to Thailand only last year, on the day few Thai formed the government. On Thursday night at a meeting, the ruling coalition chose Paetongtarn as its replacement. None of the 10 other parties in the coalition put forward an alternative. Pheu Thai and its partners hold 314 seats in Parliament, and Paetongtarn require the approval of over half of the present 493 lawmakers to become Prime Minister. Paetongtarn helped run the hotel arm of the family's business empire before joining politics 3 years ago, and has never held elected office. She was a near constant presence on the campaign trail in the 2023 elections, when she was one of Pheu Thai's Prime Minister candidates, given birth just 2 weeks before polling day. The Reformist Move Forward Party MFP won the most seats in Parliament, but was blocked from forming a government by the Senate, which at the time was appointed by the military and had a veto of prime ministerial appointments. Last week, the Constitutional Court voted to dissolve MFP and bar its executive board members from politics for 10 years over its promise to amend strict royal defamation laws. The party has since regrouped as the People's Party. Talking U.S. 2024 election on Thursday, deep into his ranting news conference, ex-President Donald Trump told the truth that explained everything. "I'm very angry at her." He was referring to Vice President Kamala Harris, whose late entry into the general election race has left him bitter, disoriented, and mourning the loss of the old campaign, the one he was winning against President Joe Biden. Trump's discombobulation was laid bare in a self-pitying and raging stream of consciousness delivered at his New Jersey golf club that raised serious questions about the future trajectory of his quest to return to power. The ex-president insulted his way into the Oval Office in 2016 when his often unhinged soliloquies that shattered all the rules of modesty and politics pleased grassroots Republican voters craving an anti-establishment revolution. But 8 years on, the now familiar act is getting tired, a reality that's been thrown into sharp relief now that Trump is facing a new campaign against younger, more energetic opponent rather than a rerun against 81-year-old Biden. The former president is driving his planners to distraction by refusing to stay focused on the issues like the economy that could help him prevail in November. He keeps missing chances to prod Harris's vulnerabilities, allowing the vice president the space to power up her campaign and erase Biden's polling deficits. Almost every Trump event now feels like damage control for a former one that went off the rails. Thursday's news conference was a do-over for Wednesday's trip to North Carolina, when the ex-president mocked his own aides for demanding that he give an intellectual speech on the economy and instead went his own way, focusing on insulting his opponent. On Thursday, Trump's team did their best for him. Someone went to a local supermarket and stocked up on groceries, including Cheerios, tops and coffee, and ketchup, and provided Trump with charts showing the high cost of goods in the Biden era. But the boss didn't even get to the end of his first point before veering into a furious aside while falsely accusing Democrats of acting illegally by replacing Biden with Harris. It was a coup by people that wanted him out, and they didn't do it not the way they are supposed to do it. $129 more on energy and $241 more. This is all part month of rent, Trump said, running two thoughts together in his fury. The ex-president still has millions of devoted supporters, and he remains in striking distance of one of the most turning comebacks in American politics and becoming only the second defeated one-term president to return to office. And while his outrageous behavior is precisely the reason numerous of his followers love him, it risks further alienating moderate, suburban swing state voters who cost him the 2020 election and will be key in what is shaping up as a close fight. On judicial matters now, New Zealand is set to extradite Kim.com, internet mogul, to the United States after the country's justice minister gave his approval on Thursday. .com, who was born in Germany but has New Zealand residency, had been fighting his extradition to the United States since 2012. He is facing charges linking to his file-sharing site Mega Upload, which was closed by the United States government that same year. According to a government statement issued on Thursday, New Zealand Justice Minister Paul Goldsmith has now signed an extradition order for .com, paving the way for his deportation. A Deviant.com took to X, formerly Twitter, later on Thursday to write, "I love New Zealand, I'm not leaving." .com is the flamboyant founder of Mega Upload, a website which was used by millions as a fast and easy way to store massive files in a locker online and share them with others. Soon after his site was shut down, .com was arrested by New Zealand police, who descended on his luxury mansion in Auckland in 2 marked helicopters and had to cut their way into a locked safe room to reach him. Along with 3 co-defendants, .com was indicted by a U.S. grand jury on a range of charges, including conspiracy to commit racketeering, wire fraud, conspiracy to infringe copyright on a commercial scale, and money laundering. The 4 men are accused by U.S. authorities of profiting from copyright infringement through the website. .com and his co-defendants deny the accusations and had been fighting hard against extradition, arguing that Mega Upload was simply a file-sharing website and that they shouldn't be blamed for what others were uploading to it. 3 New Zealand courts ruled against them, throwing out their arguments and claims that they couldn't be extradited on charges of profiting from copyright infringement because it is not a crime in New Zealand. The final decision on whether to extradite .com rested with the Justice Minister. U.S. law is heavily weighted in favor of copyright holders and has been criticized for stifling innovation and harming consumers and for exporting U.S. copyright regulations to other countries through free trade agreements. On more stories and on health, Sweden reports first Mpox case. On Thursday, Sweden confirmed its first case of the viral infection Mpox, which was also the first case outside Africa, a day after the World Health Organization, WHO, declared the disease a global public health emergency for the second time in 2 years. The person was infected while staying in part of Africa where there was a huge outbreak of the disease, Olivia Wicksell, Director General at the Swedish Public Health Agency, said, according to report. The World Health Organization made its announcement over Mpox, which spreads through close contact after an outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo DRC spread to close by countries of a more serious type of the disease. Health and Social Affairs Minister Jacob Forsmed said, "We have now also during the afternoon had confirmation that we have 1 case in Sweden of the more grave type of Mpox, the one called Clade I." Wicksell said the person who was infected had received care and instructions in line with the health agency's recommendations. In African shores, Zimbabwe activists face repression ahead of summit. 4 marksmen tried to break into office of crisis in Zimbabwe coalition ZC on the morning of August 7th, a network of groups fighting for democratic freedom in a country where it is often deadly to dissent. Inside the Harare building, 3 staff members ran to hide as the men smashed the security camera outside the gate and tried to force their way in. It was only after neighbors who witnessed the attempted break-in assured the staff that the men had left after triggering an alarm that they came out of hiding. Staff members have since avoided the office. Peter Mutasa, chairperson of the coalition, said according to a report that no one wants to go there. It was a very traumatic experience for them and they feel unsafe. The intruders, he said, were likely government operatives, as the incident followed a government-owned newspaper accusing Mutasa of planning demonstrations. The incident at ZZC comes during crackdowns on pro-democracy activists and opposition members as Zimbabwe gears up to host a summit of Southern African Development Community (SADC) on Saturday in Harare. It's the first time the 16-member bloc will meet in Zimbabwe in a decade. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa will also assume leadership of the SADC, a critical first for his administration. But that glory is marred by what activists call paranoia from the government as police units flooded the streets this week in anticipation of protests. Security officials have attacked activists and opposition party members at private hangouts and protest venues since June, accusing them of trying to disrupt the SADC summit. 78 people, including Jameson Timber, leader of the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change (CCC), were arrested without bail on June 16th at a political gathering that authorities said was unauthorized. On June 27th, another set of protesters demanding the release of the detained CCC members outside the court in Harare were also bundled away by security forces. Around 160 people have been detained since June, according to Amnesty International. Police officials hit protesters during arrest and psychologically tortured them in detention, lawyers representing them said. Now, United Nations says South Sudan unprepared for polls in December. South Sudan is not set to hold its first post-independence elections in December, and political players are deliberating whether voting should be held this year. The United Nations top envoy in the troubled African country said on Wednesday. Nicholas Haysom told the United Nations Security Council that the consultations make it hard to treat the election date of December 22nd, announced last month by the National Elections Commission, as a definitive trigger in isolation from other critical factors. The vote, which will be the first since South Sudan gained independence from Sudan in 2011 after a long conflict, is intended to be the finale of a peace agreement signed 5 years ago to pull the world's newest nation out of a civil war widely based on ethnic divisions. Fighting between forces loyal to the present President Salva Kiir battled those loyal to the current Vice President Riek Machar, killing some 400,000 people. Haysom last December outlined a series of conditions required to hold credible and peaceful elections. In April, he told the Security Council the parties hadn't implemented a critical mass of the key steps for free and fair elections, and he told the United Nations most powerful body Wednesday that this assessment is the same today. On a positive note, he said the Elections Commission has started assessing the ground-level infrastructure and facilities required for a conducive environment for conducting elections, and 29 political parties have been registered. The United Nations peacekeeping mission continues to support the formation of an enabling environment for elections in South Sudan whenever they are held, focusing on its mandate to help protect civilians, Haysom said. United Nations Ambassador Linda Thomas U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield told the Council that the United States and many diplomatic missions are deeply concerned that a security law could further erode the country's political and civic environment. We take a breather now, and when we come back, more news, particularly from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back. Now, stories from Nigeria, and we're beginning with health matters. NCDC reports 39 cases of mpox in Nigeria. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention, NCDC, has recorded 39 cases of mpox in the country, with 0 deaths in 33 states of the federal and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The states with the highest cases include Bayelsa with 5, Cross River 5, Ogun 4, Lagos 4, Ondo 3, and Ebonyi 3. Dr. Jide Idris, Director General of NCDC, who revealed this on Thursday in Abuja, expressed concern over the ease of cross-border transmission of the disease. Mpox is a rare viral zoonotic infectious disease endemic in many African countries, including the tropical rainforests of Central and West Africa. The precise reservoir of the virus is still unknown, although rodents, squirrels, and monkeys are suspected to play a part in transmission. Mpox has been declared a public health emergency of international continental concern by both the World Health Organization (WHO) and the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (ACDC). Regarding the government's efforts to control the outbreak, the DG said the surveillance has been increased across Nigeria to speedily detect and respond to any new cases. This puts all port health services across all 5 international airports, 10 seaports, and 51 land-food crossing borders on high alert. Diagnostic protocols according to the IDSR are now distributed to these locations, and port health officers are on high alert and screening for suspected cases. Some states have also been on high alert, including Lagos, Abuja, Enugu, Kano, Rivers, Cross River, Akwa Ibom, Adamawa, and Taraba states. We also conducted contact tracing and monitor for confirmed cases to prevent further spread. These will now also include a declaration by travelers who have been to any of those countries whether there is an ongoing outbreak of Mpox in the last 90 days, he added. He also said the federal government was considering vaccination efforts for high-risk groups as Nigeria expects to receive 10,000 doses of the Jynneos vaccine. He said Dr. Jide urged the public to adhere to proven infection prevention and control measures to stop the spread of Mpox. And finally on the news, federal government pursuing legal diplomatic efforts to reclaim seized jet, says AGF. Lateef Fagbemisan, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, has said that his office and that of the National Security Advisor have started legal and diplomatic steps to recover 3 of Nigeria's presidential aircraft seized in France over a fine awarded against Ogun State. This was contained in a statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Communication and Publicity, Office of the AGF, Kamaruddin Ogundele, on Thursday in Abuja. Remember that a French court had authorized the seizure of 3 of Nigeria's presidential jets. 2 of the jets were part of Nigeria's presidential air fleet that was recently put up for sale, and the third, an Airbus 330 purchased by Nigeria but not yet delivered. The seized presidential jets included Dassault Falcon 7X at Le Bourget Airport in Paris, a Boeing 737 and an Airbus 330 at Basel-Mahaus Airport in Switzerland, all 3 of them presently undergoing maintenance. The Nigerian government reportedly paid over $100 million for the Airbus. The jets were seized following an application by Zhongshan, a Chinese company whose export processing zone management contract was revoked by the Ogun State government in 2016. Zhongshan had dragged the Ogun State government to court, where an independent arbitral tribunal chaired by the former president of the United Kingdom Supreme Court awarded Zhongshan about $74.5 million in compensation, which the Ogun State government is yet to honor. The court order prohibited Nigeria from moving or selling the presidential jet until the Chinese firm Zhongshan has been paid $74.5 million from Ogun State, its subnational. A recap of major stories says Palestinian killed in attacks by Israeli settlers in West Bank. Nusantara, Indonesia's progress symbol to be inaugurated. Paetongtarn Shinawatra becomes Thailand's youngest prime minister. Trump's anger at Harris Biden switch fuels his campaign. And New Zealand to extradite Kim.com to the United States. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend ahead.